Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, merci.
Because of the ongoing extremist violence, flights and boats to Tombouctou have been removed. Road travel is the only way to get there, so these trucks are where we'll spend the next 10 hours.
Mɔgɔ kelen fa t'a la ye mɔgɔ kelen fa t'a la ye mɔgɔ kelen fa t'a la ye a k'ilen min sɔnna nafolo la ni bi waso la nafolo t'anw na mɔgɔ kelen fa t'a la ye a k'ilen min sɔn den caman na ni bi waso den t'anw na mɔgɔ kelen fa t'a la ye.
When Ouagadougou declined, the Almoravids were unable to hold on to their vast, complex empire. Their leader, Abu Bakr, died in 1087 whilst trying to suppress an uprising for the smaller kingdoms of the empire named Takrur. It was now the turn of the Pol people, known today as the Fulani, who also originated in the upper waters of the Senegal and Niger rivers, as did the Soninke of Ouagadougou. Under their leader, Somanguru, the Fulani set upon the road to conquest, and just after the year 1200, they had taken Kumbi Saleh. Somanguru didn't believe in Islam, so the Muslim traders there were moved further north into the Sahara, establishing new trading posts at Walata. In the year 1240, Somanguru would be defeated at the famous Battle of Kirina, causing his generals to retreat back to Tekro. The defeat was by the smaller state of Kangaba, near the headwaters of the Niger River. This little state would become the heart of the most impactful empires in the region, the Empire of Mali. It was these Mandinka peoples who would bring peace and order to wide regions of West and Northern Africa for the next few centuries, and their impact would be felt even across the Atlantic. Somanguru had exiled the brother of Kangaba's ruler, a man named Maridiata. With the help of the local ruler, Maridiata returned with an army and marched towards the dreaded Somanguru. Somanguru's defeat at the Battle of Kirina would change the name of Maridiata to a name which still resonates in Mali today, Sundiata Keita. Like the Soninke of Ouagadougou, the Mandinka too were middlemen in the gold trade during the latter periods of Ouagadougou's existence. Sundiata was the most colourful of Mali's rulers, but he wasn't the first, nor the most famous. That role would be reserved for Mansa Kankan Musa, who came to power in about 1312 after his uncle, Abu Bakr, emigrated by ship to modern-day Mexico, nearly 200 years before a European would do so successfully. But Abu Bakr wasn't a pioneer. There has always been a current on the Senegambia coast strong enough to steer even the most primitive of boats directly into the Gulf of Mexico. The Norwegian explorer Thor Heyerdahl tested this theory in 1969 when he and a handful of Beduma people in northwestern Africa recreated a papyrus reed boat that had been used in Africa 2,500 years ago. Their steering broke on the first day, yet they still eventually arrived in the island of Barbados. Cristobal Colon, whose name would later be Americanized as Christopher Columbus, was known to have sailed up and down the coast of West Africa for decades and had been aware of African traders using these sails to cross the Atlantic. In 1462, 30 years before he sailed, Portuguese mariners had begun settling in the Cape Verdean Islands. There they found a type of cotton only found in South America. Colon also wrote about Africans he encountered on his first voyage, who traded in gold-tipped metal spears, the same as those used in ancient Ouagadougou. Then there are the Olmec heads, which depict African faces with broad noses and full lips, that were found in Mexico in 1858. The wood which they stood in dated back to at least 640 BC, which shows that Abu Bakr was merely making a trip that Africans had been making for nearly 2,000 years. Mansa Kankan Musa already had firm control of the trading routes to the gold lands of the south. Now he brought into his empire the key trading cities of Gao and Tombouctou, imposing his rule on the trading cities of Walata, to the very frontiers of Hausa land, westwards into Tekro, and the lands of the Fulani and Tukolo. Mansa established such peace that when the Arab writer Ibn Battuta visited, 12 years after Mansa's death, he couldn't help but write about how safe things were. It is said that Mansa's Mali could take 6 months to travel from one corner to the other. Obviously without a car, like me. Sankore Mosque was once the main campus of the famous university system of Tombouctou. Within these walls, the great West African pioneers of medicine, poetry, and philosophy would study at the feet of their teachers, writing thousands, if not millions, of manuscripts. Islam steadily widened its influence under the time of Mansa Musa, but many rulers and peoples of the empire remained loyal to their own religions. Such was the tolerance of Islam in this part of the world. Mansa, himself a Muslim, readily accepted visitors from Arabia and Egypt. Islam and trade grew together and prospered. Mansa even made a famous pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, passing through Cairo and giving away so much gold and lavish gifts that he devalued the cost of gold for a year. Mali was undoubtedly a world power under Mansa Musa. Malian embassies were established in Morocco, Egypt, and elsewhere. Upon his return from Mecca, he brought back learned men from Egypt to settle in Timbuktu. It is said that one of them, Al-Saheli, designed the new mosque at Timbuktu. But Mali's successes also led to its decline. This far-reaching empire was under constant pressure for the onward movement of civilization. The spread of metalworking, trade, the growth of kingship, as well as wealth and commercial rivalry. These influences stirred the many peoples of West Africa. Some even began to refuse to pay taxes, believing they could do better on their own. Mali remained powerful until 1400. Then the Tuareg of the southern Sahara seized Walata and even Timbuktu. Then the Wolof of neighboring Tekro, and by 1550, Mali ceased to exist completely. But its impact, even if only in name, is still felt today. One of Timbuktu's greatest scholars was Ahmed Baba. Some of his books are housed in this library, currently closed for renovations. A Muslim himself, Ahmed Baba said famously, "Believe in God and science." He wrote nearly 50 books in his life, sold in Europe and all over North Africa, and he is regarded by many as the greatest Muslim scholar of his day. but his decline coincided with that of the great empire that was to follow. When Timbuktu was recently occupied, many of her manuscripts were destroyed by the extremist Muslims from the north. Western media reported of daily beheadings and stonings, thus forcing the French to send in a liberation force. My guide Umar was here during this time, so I asked him what actually happened.
Dans le monde entier, ils disent que les islamistes ont tué beaucoup de gens aussi.
Pas ici. Ça, c'est un chaos. Parce que là-bas, il y a beaucoup de bandits. Donc, ils n'ont pas tué une seule personne. Et ils ont coupé la main d'une personne. Ça seulement, à ma connaissance, ouvert. Ils ont dit que maintenant, au lieu de rester.
Ils étaient ici pour combien de temps?
Ça fait un an. 11 mois.
Ok.
Donc, ils ont dit, au lieu de rester ici seulement, il faut avancer, aller vers le sud. Donc, c'est de là qu'ils ont. Ils étaient arrêtés à Douala seulement. C'est de là qu'ils sont regroupés pour aller au-delà de Douala, pour aller vers le sud. Ils sont arrivés jusqu'à Panda. C'est de là qu'on avait le président intérimaire.
Il avait été le président de la République par intérim du Mali du 12 avril 2012 au 4 septembre 2013. Aujourd'hui, il veut être le président tout court. Diokonda Traoré brigue la...
Non, la première intervention, c'était fait par la France. Sans demander l'avis de l'ONU ou n'importe.
Mais pourquoi ils n'ont pas parti?
Qui, la France ne fait pas. Parce que jusqu'à présent, il y a des kamikazes. Donc, il y a des systèmes même que c'est eux qui maîtrisent. Parce que si tu es le premier à venir sur le terrain de combat, c'est toi qui maîtrises. Donc, même la ministre de la CDAO, c'est de France qui les donne.
By the 11th century, Gao had been taken over by the enterprising Dias of a small nation named Songhai. Their king, Dia Kosoi, like other Muslim kings in West Africa, Dia Kosoi and his successors did not let their acceptance of Islam become offensive to their own people's beliefs. In about 1335, the Dia line of Songhai had given way to the line of Sunnis or Shi. The second Sunni, named Suleiman Ma, won back Gao's independence from Mali in 1375, and Songhai began its own period of expansion. Under the great Sunni Ali, who like many great rulers rose up in a time of confusion, Songhai built a large unified system of law and order, central government, and peaceful trade. Sunni Ali's name carries a lot of respect even today, despite him reigning 500 years ago. He became king of Gao in about 1464, when Mali was becoming weak from the Tuareg raiders from the north and the Mossi from the south. Sunni Ali was a great military captain and made war to unite the vast lands of West Africa. It is said that he was never once defeated in battle during his 35-year reign. Sunni Ali then turned on the Dogon, then the Fulani, who had the same ambitions for plunder in the neighboring hills of Bandiagra. By 1468, 4 years after becoming emperor, he had cleared the country of immediate danger and at once attacked the Tuareg, who had held Timbuktu since 1433. Sunni Ali died in 1492 as he returned from an expedition. His son, Sunni Baro, succeeded him but was deposed in battle 14 months later by a powerful rebel named Mohammed Touré. Mohammed Touré would later come to be known as Askia Muhammad. During the course of Askia's reign from 1493 to 1528, Songhai entered its greatest point of expansion. He made a sharp break with the religious and family traditions of the Sunni line, ruling as a strict Muslim, placing power firmly on the largely Muslim towns of his empire. Although many traditional customs and practices were still observed at his court, his laws and methods were increasingly in accordance with Islamic ideas. This helped him retain power when he went on a 2-year pilgrimage to Mecca from 1495 to 97. Askia Muhammad developed the administrative changes made by Sunni Ali, building up a machinery of central government that was stronger and more detailed in its work than any other known in the so-called Western Sudan. He united the whole central region of this land as Mansa had done 2 centuries earlier. History would call Askia Muhammad the greatest civil administrator of all time. Even Flora Shaw, the British journalist responsible for creating the name Nigeria, would highlight Askia Muhammad's administrative supremacy in her book. Askia Muhammad would disguise his soldiers as commoners in the local markets just to ensure traders didn't cheat the people. Traders would often give a little bit more to their customers, which is the origin of the word dash, a market term used in West Africa. Over 80 years of age, Muhammad became blind and was deposed by the eldest of his 50 sons, Askia Musa. Askia Musa was killed by his subjects after just 3 years, and just as Ouagadougou and Mali before, infighting began amongst his successors, and the old conflict between Islam and traditional religion sprouted up again. The decline of Songhai coincided with the loss of power in the Mediterranean of their distant cousins, the so-called Moors. Europe now had control of their maps, and a naval school was established by a non-seagoing Portuguese king called Henrique. Europe was awakening from its long sleep, and with the framework of Christianity, began conquering new lands overseas, using Africans to work them. Africa was just as unprepared then as she is now to deal with the mentality of Europe. And with Askia Muhammad gone, Songhai would never recover. Jengaribe Mosque was one of the main centers of learning for the University of Tombouctou. For a 700-year-old building, it's incredibly well designed and well maintained. It's boiling outside, but it's much cooler in here because builders in Tombouctou used earth to build structures in a climate that could reach up to 50 degrees Celsius. This ensured that the interior remained cool and air conditioning was unnecessary. The families of the imams and great people of Tombouctou left their family crest there for all to see hundreds of years later.
Chaque marabout fait ça. Son signe. Ça, c'est le premier imam qui a fait ça. Pour montrer à sa famille qu'il faut être comme ça. Même les gens qui étaient...
Que la famille, c'est les choses les plus importantes. C'est ça qu'il dit avec ça.
Oui. Même si tu connais quelqu'un, après moi, on se connaît même. Quand tu vas aller, il ne faut pas que je te laisse. Après, voilà, tu vas décrocher par derrière aussi. Tu peux te rappeler de la personne, toujours tu le gardes. Tu vois les flèches en haut. Tout ce que tu fais dans la vie, il faut le faire avec courage. Il ne faut jamais, avec dévouement. Il ne faut jamais baisser les bras. Tu vois, ça va. Il y a le troisième aussi qui a fait ça.
Maintenant, on te dit, bon, moi, on a dit c'est moi qui a volé l'argent. J'ai dit, je n'ai pas volé. Bon, tu n'as pas volé, d'accord. Il faut essayer de sortir par là. Si tu n'as pas volé, tu sors. Si tu l'as volé, tu ne sors pas. Tu restes là-bas. C'est comme ça le jugement de l'époque. On ne tape pas quelqu'un, on te dit, il faut.
Ah, les hommes, c'est là, les femmes,
c'est là. Allez.
The walls of this great institute are indeed filled with history, but that is only a speck of history left in the air of this building. African minds walked through these halls on a daily basis before they were destroyed by their same so-called Islamic brothers from the north, who brought this foreign religion to them in the first place. In 1578, 25,000 Portuguese soldiers were crushed by the forces of the Sultan of Morocco at the Battle of Alcázar al-Kabr. This was as they attempted to conquer a region in North Africa. History calls this one of the decisive battles of the world because it now encouraged the Moroccans to turn southward to the prosperous Songhai, then led by Askia Dawood. The Sultan had violated a basic rule in Islam, not to wage war over a fellow believer. By 1582, salt was twice as valuable as gold. Sultan Moulay of Morocco had sent a small force of 200 men armed with arquebus muskets to seize the vital salt deposits of Tagaza, far in the north of Songhai. With no knowledge of the wells, it was difficult for the Moroccans to maintain these mines. He then decided to launch a full-scale attack to plunder the wealth of Songhai and its West African gold. For this, he employed a Spanish Christian who converted to Islam, named Judar. The Moroccans sent him with a newly Islamized 4,000-man force of mercenaries and ex-prisoners from Portugal and Spain in 1591. They marched across the Sahara, armed with cannons and arquebus muskets, the most advanced weapons of their time. Weakened by trouble and revolts at home, Songhai's ruler Askia Ishak II lost battle after battle to these Moroccans. Askia Ishak tried to resist them, but the powerful armies of Songhai now faced soldiers better armed than they were. They now experienced firearms for the first time on any scale. The Moroccans pushed into Timbuktu, hoping to find large stores of wealth ready to their hand. They were disappointed, as was Songhai, who had lost its great cities and had to resort to guerrilla tactics to try and take back their land from the Moroccans. But nothing could make it strong again, especially as the unifying power of Islam had dwindled. Ahmed Baba was exiled from Songhai to Morocco. He wrote 2 more books whilst there about his hometown in Timbuktu. The local prince had become very fond of him and granted him freedom in 1611. The majority of his work is ironically now housed in Morocco at the University of Fez. When he returned home, he found the Moroccans had married local women, had destroyed the great University of Sankore, and wrecked what was left of Timbuktu. The last 200 years of Timbuktu's reign were the first 200 years of the Atlantic enslavement of Africans. Songhai's decline saw the end of an African empire at this level anywhere in the world. Timbuktu today is a small and dusty town, a shadow of its former self when it became one of the wealthiest markets of West Africa, famous far and wide for its trade and for the learning of its scholars. Timbuktu never became the center of an important state, much less of an empire. Its geographical position meant it was badly suited to defend itself from the Tuareg raiders of the Sahara. It first burst onto the world scene as part of the Mali Empire, then the Tuareg, then the Songhai Empire, until the Moroccans invaded in 1591. The Fulanis eventually took over, then the Tukulor, and again the Tuareg. France eventually took over and merged Timbuktu into the Republic of Mali. And in many ways, you can still see evidence of her occupiers today. A little while later, I sat with a family of shoemakers as they made me my own special slippers, Timbuktu style. Umar and I take a walk through the market just before it closed for the day. The descendants of Timbuktu's occupiers are still very much around. And whilst this is a largely African country, it is from the parent nations of her most recent occupiers where instability is created today. Timbuktu used to have over 20,000 tourists per year before Ansar Dine and other extremist factions from the Sahara. I wonder, with the recent discovery of oil in Mali, are there more sinister actors at work from far beyond the shores of Africa? I'm back in the capital city of Bamako, on my way to meet Africa's foremost reggae artist. Originally from Côte d'Ivoire, he claims to have a lineage that goes back to the kings of Songhai. I'm going to meet Tiken Jah Fakoly.
J'entends trop de blabla et tout ce que j'entends.
Ce n'est pas normal que l'Afrique soit l'un des continents les plus riches et que ceux qui vivent sur ce continent très riche sont les plus pauvres. Il y a un problème. C'est-à-dire que c'était comme si on vivait dans une maison pleine d'or et qu'on est incapable de se soigner, on est incapable de mettre nos enfants à l'école, on est incapable d'acheter, d'avoir à manger.
Je pense qu'à un certain niveau, effectivement, l'histoire de Sundiata est étudiée à l'école. Hein, mais on aurait préféré qu'au niveau de l'école, on aille plus en profondeur. Qu'on aille plus en profondeur, parce que les détails de l'histoire de Sundiata sont plus racontés par les griots. Par les griots. Et nous, on aurait voulu que, que les gens racontent certains détails, comme on a raconté les détails de l'histoire de Napoléon, etc.
C'est toujours...
Voilà, je pense que c'est ce qui a manqué. Et c'est pas tard. Il faut absolument que ces histoires-là soient racontées pour que nous, on sache d'où on vient. Parce que pour beaucoup de personnes en Occident, notre histoire commence par l'esclavage.
Bien sûr.
Ou la colonisation. Je pense que si notre histoire est racontée en détail, et aux Africains, mais aussi aux Occidentaux, je pense que le regard va changer envers l'homme noir. Hein? Moi, je souhaite qu'un jour, au-delà de l'école, mais que les dirigeants financent des films, qu'on aide des réalisateurs africains à faire des films sur Samori, sur Sundiata, sur... Voilà. Je pense que c'est des films qui vont nous enseigner notre histoire, qui vont nous dire et qui vont nous montrer un peu d'où on vient. Et ça va nous galvaniser pour savoir faire les choses où on va. Voilà. Il faut aussi demander que l'histoire de Sundiata soit enseignée à l'université. À l'université, comme l'histoire de Napoléon, comme je disais tout à l'heure, parce que partout vous allez, différents niveaux des études en Occident, les gens ils étudient quand même l'histoire de tous ceux qui se sont battus pour leur continent ou pour leur pays. Donc je pense c'est à nous de pousser nos dirigeants à mettre des trucs en place pour faire des films, ou bien pour faire enseigner notre histoire à l'université ou à tous les niveaux de l'école.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, sir.
We'll continue. We'll continue because we know it's very important for our generation to do this fight. You know our ancestors fight against slavery. Our parents fight against colonization. So our generation must fight to development, to make Africa free. And nobody will change Africa for the African. This is why we're fighting, and we will continue. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It is said that along great rivers, there lie great civilizations. Whilst the world may only know modern-day Mali for its poverty, it should never be forgotten for what it gave to the world here on the banks of the river Niger. Whilst the empires of Ouagadougou, Mali, and Songhai may seem like they existed in a time too long ago to be remembered, let us equally remember that her people are still here, her manuscripts, and despite many attempts to destroy them, so is her architecture. Like many other states in Africa, her story has been whitewashed, but her impact has been felt all over the world, from the so-called Americas to the Iberian Peninsula. Islam may be embedded in this society, but its Africanness is evident in its tolerance of religion and cultural practices. This same tolerance has been under constant attack by the self-confessed arbiters of foreign religions of fraternity, whose sole desire is the exploitation of her resources, salt, then gold, now oil. Modern-day Mali may not outwardly appear to be what it was in its heyday, but the spirit of the Askias, the Sonis, the Dias, and the Kayamagans, the blood of the Soninkes, Fulanis, Dogons, Mandinkas, Mossis, Berbers, all carry the legacy of the empire within them. And if economic castration makes it difficult to see how things can improve here, I respond by saying Ouagadougou is still within. Mali is still within. Songhai is still within. And if they have done it 3 times, they can do it again.